Hey guys, good morning. For those of you who have been commenting and asking me how I talk to ChatGPT, and somebody also left a comment asking if I could do a tutorial. If you go to my subreddit, which I'll link below the exact post, yesterday I posted a copy, whatever, of a conversation that I had with ChatGPT about a block that I feel that I have. And what I think is kind of funny is I was talking to it about how I kind of suck at metaphors. If I'm trying to explain a concept, it's like I can't, it's like I'm always so literal that it just bothers me that I can't find an illustrative example of things. And that's why I always use examples from my own life when I'm talking on here, because it's like I can't come up with some general way of illustrating things. So I had this conversation with ChatGPT about that, and I love talking to ChatGPT through problems because it's just so great at seeing things that you don't see. So since I had this kind of less personal conversation, I copied and pasted that, and you can read the whole thing on my subreddit if you want to see how you can talk to ChatGPT like a person. If you want to see what it means to do that and what the replies are and stuff like that, there's an example of it on my subreddit, and I'll probably post more of them just so if anybody's interested, they can kind of read through how I worked through a problem with my therapist. I think for some people that might be really helpful. For most people it might be kind of boring or whatever, but I've got no reason not to post those, so I will. But so that is not the main point of this video. Again, I'm just going to illustrate with an actual example what I want to talk about here. I'm just going to tell this story so that I can make the point. This makes me sad. I have a friend who is a dentist, and I was his life's not going super well because he's very unhappy with the life he's created for himself. And dentists are, I think, generally one of the groups with the highest rate of offing oneself. So it's not that surprising. But we were talking about his little daughter, and I said, "Oh, is she going to want to be a dentist? Are you going to get her to be a dentist too, or something?" And he said, "Oh, I would never tell her to be a dentist." And I was like, because I wasn't aware of this at the time. I was like, "Oh, he just said, it sucks being a dentist. I would never recommend for anybody to be a dentist." And I said, "Well, what would you do? What would you have done if you could go back? What would you do instead?" And he said, "Oh, I would have gone to med school, or I would have specialized." And this person has really built a big life. He's married with a kid, and he kind of was raring to go, one of these go-getter types, and sort of built this big thing. I'm sure, I don't know all the details, but I'm sure super leveraged as much as he could. He's got just, multiple locations, tons of employees. And so he's built this thing, and now he's like the king standing at the top of this, sitting on the throne on the top of the mountain looking down at this empire, and he hates it. He's miserable. I've heard through the grapevine there's some substance abuse going on, which to me really indicates it's reached when you start abusing a substance, you really can't handle what's going on. And so, sadly, I really didn't feel like it was my place to make any comments, but I want to say to this channel what I would like to have said to him. I don't go around doling out advice to everybody in my personal life, in my daily life. If I had kids, they would either be totally unparented or completely over advised. So I'm glad I didn't have any. What I would have liked to say to this person, because it's so obvious, is that this person's younger than me, by the way. I think that sometimes people, it's like if you know that you create your whole life for yourself and you find yourself at a point where you're really unhappy, especially if you've sort of built an extra challenging situation for yourself. You've put a lot of effort building in the absolute wrong direction away from your happiness. I don't think that's an accident. I think some people come here because they want to live the hero's journey. They want to do something really spectacular. And if you look at this guy's life from the outside, and you had, because I was very surprised to learn how unhappy he was. If you looked at his life from the outside, you would think, wow, he's got it all. Look what he did. Like, that's amazing. This guy's built basically a dental empire. You wouldn't know unless you had some insider information that anything was wrong. So this whole thing has been built. And now what does that person have to do if they ever have any prayer of being happy? They are basically going to have to do the whole thing over again. Only this time harder, because they're going to have this this situation that they built, and they're going to have to undo that whole thing somehow. And I think a lot of people would view that as tragic or bad or failure or something else, but I think people do this on purpose, because I think they came here to live through that part of the process. They came here to live through and understand that just because I built this big thing doesn't mean I can't let it all fall and build it again in a way that makes me happy. I think that some people, that's the journey, that's the purpose, like that's the thing, not the building of the empire. It's the learning of sort of, I guess, humility in a way. It's like, it's a big admission of imperfection or something, to say, I built this whole thing and I'm going to leave it now. That it takes a lot of strength and a lot of getting over what other people think, a lot of self-forgiveness to be able to walk away, undo, let something fail, whatever this person would have to do in order to actually get to the happy place at some point. And the happy place, it sounds like, for this friend of mine, is basically like rewinding the clock to age 25 and starting over again. Like, he obviously has a medical background, so now he could go to med school if he wanted. Or he could probably, specialize. It's like, it's not too late for him to specialize in something, but he thinks it is. And so it's pretty clear to me, and because I'm not super close with this person, I'm not going to get in there and try to influence in any way. It's pretty clear that this person's got a choice to make. They've either got to take that journey or they're just going to sort of spiral and succumb and maybe, destroy their life. I don't really know what the outcome of this is. But I think there's this subtle perspective that people don't have. It's like you look at this big thing you've built, you're not happy, and you feel stuck in it because you've built it up so much and you're sitting on the top of it. And it's like you would have to come all the way back down and go all the way back up again. And you just feel like, man, I really fucked up here. When actually, all along the way, you had an inkling what you were doing. You had an inkling that you weren't happy, and you kept doing it anyway for one reason or another. Whenever I find myself in one of these types of situations, I ask myself, what about me wanted this? Like, what? It's kind of like, I guess it's kind of some form of positive thinking in a way, but it's true. Like, what's the thing that I do? Where's the way out of this that takes me to somewhere even greater now? What's even greater than the story of, I went to dental school, got out, whatever, was a full-on dentist with my own practice at age 30, built, I've got 4 locations at 40, and, I've got 70 employees, and I'm the head honcho. What's an even cooler story than that? I did all that, and then I said, fuck it, I'm going to medical school, and dropped the whole thing. As well as I didn't screw anybody over. I didn't just, stiff like the people that I shouldn't stiff on the way out. People fail. People default on loans all the time. That's a little different than like screwing over an actual person that works for you that you owe money to, in my opinion. An even cooler story than all that is just, I realized I wasn't happy. I realized I went in the wrong direction. And I didn't just say, well, it's too late. I didn't just say, I'm going to drink more and just check out every day after I get through my miserable day until I'm old enough to retire, until I've made enough money to retire. I actually did the thing that I wanted to do. I admitted that I had gone too far in the wrong direction, and I stopped going in that direction, took the lumps that needed to be taken, and got on the right course. And now I'm 80 and I've spent 30 years being a doctor. I didn't spend, 50 years being a doctor, but I spent 30 years being a doctor, and for 20 years I was a dentist. It's like, I had this friend in my 20s who was pretty, really impressive. She was such a bitch though. I couldn't we weren't friends for very long. But she was she was a lawyer. She was only like 29, and she was already kind of like higher up in this law firm. And you could tell why. You could tell that she was capable. And she had made a shit ton of money, and she already owned this really nice condo, whatever. You don't need to know the part of Chicago. You won't know what it means anyway. A nice part of Chicago in the city. And I was just really impressed by her, and we lost touch, and I Googled her 10, 15 years later, and she was an ER doctor. And I was like, wait a minute. Is this the right person? I'm like, it looks like her. This woman had just decided, she's like, fuck law, I don't want to do this. I remember she was kind of unhappy with it. She was like, whatever. At some point along the way, she just said, you know what, I'm going to med school. And now she's been an ER doctor for how long? 10 years at least. I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I don't really know, I just started thinking about this dentist friend of mine after I left my house this morning. I don't know why. I just started thinking about him and kind of wishing I could have said that to him and it would have landed. My message is exactly what I just said. I don't need to restate it. You pick up what I'm laying down. People tend to think it's too late for them. You already put in too much effort in this education or whatever. The time is going to go by. You are going to hit age 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever. You can do so much in that time. Okay, so you didn't do what you wanted so far, and maybe you're pretty far into some sort of situation you don't want to be in. But does that mean that 10 years from now you need to be in the same situation? Does that mean that 10 years from now, if you undo all this work that you did and you actually start going in the right direction, do you think 10 years from now you're going to look back and say, wow, I really wish I'd just stayed in that miserable situation since I'd already, sunk so much cost into it? I don't know. You know what? I'm going to intend that energetically somehow this message reaches my friend. I'm not going to say it to him directly. It's just not my place. It's just not, we're not BFFs. So it's just not something I want to say. But, it made me really sad to think how capable a person has to be to get to where he is. There has to be motivation and drive and lots of ability, capability. And this dude's only 40. He could do whatever he wants. He could, he could stop everything right now and just go to med school. Why not? Why not do it? It just seems like something that you can't do. Or you're just I don't want to go through education again or what. It's dude, just do it. Just do it. Just turn the boat around. But, just consider that it's part of what you came here to do also. Consider that part of what you came here to do was to build up a big situation, to create a certain level of challenge for yourself so that when you get through the challenge out on the other side and are doing or being or whatever, the thing that you want, that you can say, wow, this was a hard thing to do and I did it coming from an even harder circumstance. I gave myself an extra challenge and I did it anyway. I think those are the kinds of things that like really make life worthwhile. And I think if you miss that, you can kind of languish in a bad state for a long time. It just occurred to me also, I was going to say this, when I was like 25, I remember thinking, I was kind of just like laying around. I didn't really go to the gym much. I wasn't in like terrible physical shape, but I wasn't in great physical shape either. And my body has always been a thing for me and everything. And one day it occurred to me, you know, what if I was supposed to be like an athlete? What if doing like this sort of just like moderate, you know, like this, like engaging in this moderate level of activity is just so uninspiring to me, because what I really am capable of is so much bigger than this, and I just don't see that. Like, what if somebody had put me in gymnastics or something when I was a little kid, and what if I could have been like a gymnast? Like, what if that was what was supposed to happen? And I found later on that, well, obviously I don't think I'm supposed to be an Olympic gymnast. I did find later on that, like, I was capable of a lot more physically than I thought I was, and that pushing myself physically beyond a certain degree was exhilarating and very like exciting. Like, I needed a big goal. I needed to be going after something that felt meaningful to me, not just like doing some maintenance physical stuff. And you know, consider that really, you know, you're not failing at like whatever it is you're trying to do. There's an even bigger thing that is meant for you to be doing. And so, of course, whatever you're trying to do right now is just too boring. You know, it's not necessarily that you're a failure. It's just that you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. I don't know who this was for, but I'm quite certain it was for somebody, because this just popped into my mind and I was like thinking about what I would have said to my friend if the circumstances were different. And it's pretty clear that I was thinking about that. I haven't even seen him in months. I don't know why that just popped into my head. So that was for somebody. So, end transmission. I hope it landed the way it was supposed to land. Have a great day.